specifically, since I'm also a student in the themed entertainment design certificate program. And I also participated in the Disney College program when I was in college the first time, back in spring of 2014. So I went through the entire application process and the whole program when I was there. So happy to answer questions about that. And I'm also the campus representative for the college program right now. So I get tons of information from the recruiters and from the program managers of the college program. So I just have a lot of information to share. So we can keep this super informal too, so I can talk at you, but I would love for you all to ask questions as we go too. If we're touching on a topic that you would like to know about a little bit more, feel free to just unmute yourself and we can talk about it, or put it in the chat, whatever you feel most comfortable with. And then I think Cassandra might join at some point, but Cassandra is also part of the club and has recently been accepted to the Disney College program. I'm pretty sure she's leaving in April. So she has good information that is recent, although I don't think the application has changed that much in that time. So hopefully she pops on. If not, I'll just cover all of it. So the first thing I want to talk about is just finding the opportunities, right? So wherever you're at in school, if you're at the very beginning and you're kind of thinking, well, I could use an internship at some point, or if you're getting closer to graduation and thinking about how to get hired, internships or other part-time opportunities are really great ways of doing that. So, and I know that's kind of frustrating when you're like, how do I even find the thing, right? I don't even know where to look. So I want to briefly touch on some things that I recommend to students. Number one, utilize LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is good for a couple of reasons. One, so that you can actually see job postings, but two, so you can network with people. And we'll talk about that in a second and how that is important to finding an internship opportunity. Because the more conversations that you have, the more likely you are going to find an internship and be hired into that internship. My other recommendation is go straight to the company's website that you're thinking about doing an internship with, or that you'd like to do an internship with. So I just included some examples of very common places that students in themed entertainment are thinking about. Obviously Disney or Universal are big ones. And they post their internships on a pretty regular basis on their websites. Universal just opened all of their summer internships a week or two ago. So they're all posted on their website right now, which is very exciting. And then Disney kind of does them on a rotating basis, kind of whenever they need an intern. So they have posted several summer opportunities, and they're starting to post fall opportunities on their websites as well. And I say go straight to the website, because sometimes whatever's posted on LinkedIn or Indeed or those other sites is not as regularly updated as the actual website itself. So you might be applying for something that's actually already closed and not know that until you get through the process. So go straight to the website, do some research on other companies too. If you're like, oh, it would be great to work at Disney or Universal, but I realize those are very competitive internships. So maybe you choose to look into some other companies that do similar work. So I included Animax on here. If you're someone who's thinking about maybe some animatronic design or things like that, go straight to their website, do a little research on what they do, and then see if they have an open internship. And I know another big one is AOA down in Orlando, and I have seen them post all their internships frequently on their website too. So, and I think those are all just kind of a rotating basis, unless they have a well-established internship program. And then this last little logo that I included on here is just a great resource for you all to know about. It's themedentertainmentjobs.com. And so that is just a resource where they post themed entertainment jobs all over the place. So it could be at Disney, Universal, or other big companies in the industry, or even small companies in the industry, I guess. And I have seen all types of positions, full-time, part-time, internships, the whole gambit. And I think Alan's going to pop that link in the chat if you want to check it out. They also have a LinkedIn page. So if you're on LinkedIn, I would follow it, and they update that regularly too. So I would check out those places as kind of like a good way to find an internship. There's better ways though, and that's what I want to talk about next, which is networking. So use the people that you know, use the people that you don't know, and see if you can find an internship that way. So I'm going to play this quick video just on informational interviewing, because I know some people are like, how do I network with people? It feels kind of scary. I don't know what to say. I don't really want to just message them and say, hey, do you have an internship? I'm looking, right? Because that feels icky right off the start. So my recommendation is to do an informational interview instead of jumping right into that. So I'm going to play this. It's going to kind of explain it, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it.
An informational interview is an amazingly powerful tool. It can help you learn about different types of work you're interested in. And by providing inside perspective, it may even connect you to opportunities you couldn't see from the outside. So let's take a look at what informational interviewing is all about. An informational interview is not a job interview, and it's not a tricky play to get a job. If you're asking for a job and they do have one, then they'll likely start judging whether you're a good fit. And if they don't have one, then that conversation ends there. The key to a successful informational interview is curiosity. With sincere curiosity and good questions about your interviewee's life and experience, you gain insights into their successes and failures, how they got where they are, and what's important to them. Your curiosity will lead to an authentically engaged conversation, which also opens the door for the interviewee to get curious about you. The professional you're speaking with might say something like, wow, you're asking some really good questions. And in that transition, informational interviewing becomes even more valuable for someone looking for work. Informational interviews give you an opportunity to see what kinds of work resonate with you and help you determine what communities you would like to be a part of. In a good informational interview, the professional you speak with gets a lot out of the conversation too. They get to discuss their life and their work with someone who's curious about their experience and values their expertise. Plus, they get the pleasure of talking with someone who's genuinely interested in what they do. How do you do it well? Here are 5 tips to get you started. First, do your homework. Take some time to research LinkedIn or other online platforms to learn about the professional you're interviewing. Consider what questions you have about their life and work. The second tip is to try to meet in person. On the phone is okay, but face-to-face is best. 3, always try to buy the coffee or lunch. Your interviewee is giving you their time. Paying is a good way of showing your appreciation and beginning to create a connection. 4, ask your interviewee who else they recommend you talk with. If the interview has gone well, they may be willing to connect you to other professionals you could learn from and who might have opportunities for you. Finally, tip number 5, after the interview, send a thank you. Email is okay, but a handwritten note is even better. And if they ask you to keep them posted on your progress, do so.
Okay. Alan, I'm going to pick on you for a minute because I know that you've had a successful informational interview in like the last couple of weeks. Do you want to share that experience?
Yeah. So I emailed some people at AOA and got a response, and I was able to set up an informational interview, and it went really well. I met with their head of communications. Usually I think you would meet with somebody who has a job that's similar to what you want to do, but all of their designers were crazy busy. So it was great meeting with her. They gave me about an hour to ask questions, and I think that's probably considerably longer than you would typically get. I would maybe plan on like 20 to 30 minutes. But if you can get more, definitely take it and have a ton of questions ready in case you do get that extra time. And then once that was over, she actually asked me if I was interested in any of their internships. And one thing I've heard that you definitely don't do is ask for an internship or a job during these informational interviews. And then after the interview, I was just searching for something kind of original to send as a thank you for their time. So on Amazon, I found these like postcard packs of Disney concept art from movies and stuff. So I thought that was kind of a cool, original, different idea. So within a couple days after that interview, I sent a postcard to her thanking her specifically for her time and everything. And um, so it was great. Definitely don't be afraid to reach out and try to get one.
Thank you for sharing. I
No
also
problem.
wanted to share, so like a year ago, I was kind of exploring opportunities at Disney that made sense for me. And so I was like, I might want to work in like the internships and programs and like recruit for the college program. I knew no one in that space, even though I had participated in the program before. And I just put a post on LinkedIn that said, do any of my friends have a connection that work in Disney internships and programs? And you never know who your people know because someone that I went to graduate school with sent me a message and she's like, yeah, here you go. Here's some information. And she gave me the contact information for a manager of recruitment within the Disney internships and programs. And I emailed him and I said, hey, I'm just kind of exploring these opportunities with this area. Would you mind doing an informational interview? And he said 100% completely. Let's set up a time. We did. I got on the phone with this guy. 5 minutes in, he was like, yeah, actually, we have an internal posting for a recruiter. If you're interested in applying, I'll send you the link. I had like 5 minutes in, barely spoken to this human, and he thought I could apply for that. So, and that was wonderful. That didn't end up working out. But fast forward to like now, there was a different position posted externally. And I thought, oh, I could apply for that. I think I'm qualified. I'm going to apply and send an email to Wayne, this guy that I had already connected with. So I sent him an email real quick. And I think most of us know like how competitive Disney applications generally are. And I said, hey, Wayne, I applied for this. I'm ready to move on, I think. So like, let me know if like you have anyone I can connect with about this role. And he actually forwarded my whole application on to a recruiter. And she reached out to me like 2 days later and said, hey, I got your resume from an internal cast member. I'd love to talk to you about this position. And that also has not worked out, but still like that was still like the first point of contact. And most people don't even get far enough to even talk to a recruiter about a job. So that's like the power of just doing an informational interview. I had spoken to Wayne one time, and he was willing to forward my resume on. So that's what just informational interviewing can do. If you're looking for other ways to network, I would also recommend mentorship programs. There's lots of professional organizations that you can be a part of in the industry. I know lots of you have heard of IAPA, and that is like the big expo that happens in November. It's just a big professional organization that has its own mentorship program. I believe the Themed Entertainment Association is also developing a mentorship program as well. And if you can get into those kind of things, like mentors are powerful as well. I have a mentor through IAPA, and he is like something with operations at Kentucky Kingdom. And like, I don't really have an interest in working at Kentucky Kingdom, but I've told him what I'm interested in. And he said, okay, I have all these connections. Let me connect you. So he's connected me to design people all over the place. And he's still working to connect me to more design people throughout. So I've made tons of connections just through a mentor that I've only met with 2 times. And he has great advice for getting into the industry too. So if you can take advantage of those kind of opportunities, that's a great way to network also. I want to pause and see if anyone has questions or stories about networking or informational interviews that they want to share.
do have a question.
Okay.
So when I've reached out to people through LinkedIn, it doesn't seem to have been as successful as when I contact them directly, like through their website or something like that.
Sure.
And the one thing, do you have any thoughts on how to contact someone through LinkedIn? Because I wonder if I'm trying to put too much information in such a short amount of characters or small amount of characters.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'm just curious.
I do think keep the message kind of short and sweet, and like let them know like I'm just looking for advice and information. Like you don't need to say like you don't need to draw it out. Basically, I'm just looking for advice. Like that's really all that needs to be said. And not everyone is going to respond, unfortunately, on LinkedIn. Some people are just very busy and they don't have the time. I feel like I have reached out to so many like recruiters on LinkedIn just to say, hey, I want to know about recruiting. Can you teach me about it? And I feel like they're just so busy that it's like, well, maybe. And then you just don't hear back from some. But yeah, keep it short and sweet. I feel like don't attach your resume. Like that just is kind of like, hey, I want to know about you, but also here's my resume. Like just I'm just looking for advice. Like keep it very simple. Love to know about your pathway. I noticed that you did this, this, and this. I'm very curious about that. That's all that needs to be said.
Thank you.
Yes, but reach out through their website if you can get their email, because that's probably a more direct form of communication. But sometimes that's kind of hard to come by for such, like Disney doesn't just share their email addresses anywhere. Okay, anybody else? Okay, then we're gonna keep moving.
I had a question, actually.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
So how did you become a part of the mentor program through IAPA? I mean, like, you probably went, like, that was probably a part of it, but like, how would you get into the mentorship programs?
Yes, that's a good question. And I actually did not know about the mentorship program until I was at IAPA. And I feel like there was maybe like an announcement somewhere in the program that was like, hey, sign up for the mentorship program. And the deadline was like that day that I saw it. And they have just like an application, an online application. You just put in your basic information. It really wasn't anything too crazy, like my name, what I'm studying, what I'm interested in, why I want to be a part of the program. And that was it. So super simple, just put it in, see what happens. And IAPA does their recruitment just like once a year for the mentorship program. Some of them, it's like a rolling basis. So whatever organization that you're looking at, just kind of see what that process is. But it doesn't hurt to like unofficially ask someone to be your mentor either. Like if you have done an informational interview with someone and you're like, this person is awesome. Like they are everything that I want to be and more than that, like have a conversation like, hey, I would love for you to mentor me through this process. Would you be willing to do that? And if you think about most people who are mentors to other people, like they're going to say yes. Like I can't really think of many reasons that someone would say no, unless like, you know, they really didn't know who you were or didn't get a good sense of you from the informational interview. But yeah, it's okay to have an unofficial mentor too. The mentoring programs just make it a little bit easier so you don't have to do the work beforehand. That's a good question, Lindsay. Okay, so then we'll keep going. So you can search online, but networking is going to be your best bet. Just like Alan said, like when he was having that conversation, she said, are you interested in internships? He said, yeah, I am. Like that just made his life so much easier. And then having an internal job posting made my life a lot easier. Like all of that stuff just makes more sense than trying to search through LinkedIn or other websites to find opportunities and then just hope that you get them. So networking is important. So now you've found an opportunity and you really like it and you want to apply for it. So what do you do now? So I want to talk about a couple of things. I want to talk about resumes. I'll talk about it briefly because I know you guys get a lot of resume help in general. But I think it's important to touch on some important things here. And just a little plug, if you need help or you want suggestions on yours, I'm happy to help. Just give me a little leeway time before your deadlines and I will help you with it. So just general guidelines for formatting your resume. I typically tell students to stay away from templates. So I know it seems super easy and convenient to just use the template and put your information in. And it's fine for the beginning, but when you're trying to format it and put in more information or put in more details, it's harder to modify templates. And some people like feel very strongly about templates and they're like, oh, ew, and they'll just like throw it out. So I never want to be put in that situation. So I just say, start with a blank Word document and then format it however you want to. So if you like the lines, if you like a little bit of color in your lines, like do that. You can do all of that with a blank Word document. You want it to be easy to read and visually appealing. You don't want any crazy fonts or things that are hard to read. The main thing is someone is going to be looking at your resume for like maybe 60 seconds. So they're going to need to be able to skim information really quickly, and making it easy to read makes that process easier. You want to use like bold and italics a little bit, but you don't want to overdo it. If you bold everything, then nothing's going to stand out, and vice versa with italics. You don't want to italicize everything. Keep everything consistent. Make sure your work experiences all match. You should have the same basic information in all of your experiences. So definitely the company, your title, the dates that you were there, and the location, like bare minimum, and then some bullet points. You should have at least 2 bullet points under each of your experiences, but I always say shoot for 3 to 5. Let's see. You want to make sure like spacing is okay. I think about like folding, if you were to print your resume out and fold it in half both ways, hot dog and hamburger style, there should be about the same amount of information in each quadrant of the resume. So that'll just help with the visually appealing part. Okay, so this is just a nice example that I share with all of my students of what a nicely formatted resume could look like. And then if you're going to spend time on your resume and you take anything else away from this conversation, let it be about your bullet points and how to create strong bullet points on a resume. So instead of thinking about how can I explain my job duty to this employer, I want you to think about how can I explain my skills and accomplishments to this employer, right? So maybe you worked at Chili's for the last 2 years, and you started as a host and now you're a server, right? So sure, your basic job responsibilities were to seat people and take orders, right? But I don't want you to make bullet points that say those things. I want you to make bullet points that highlight that you're good communicators, that you have excellent customer service skills, that you're organized. Things like that are going to be what stands out to employers, and that you have transferable skills. And so when you're able to build bullet points that explain that information, it's easier for me as an employer to see how you're going to take skills that you've learned and apply it to my opening. So I have this example bullet point for you with kind of a little formula if it helps you to think about it this way. You want to start it with an action verb. So those are things like communicated, organized, developed. You want to kind of tell your job duty. So I know I said don't say your job duty, like basically kind of condense it a little bit, highlight a skill, and then move on to your actual skill, the people. So if there was people involved, who were they? And then what was the result? So most people miss out on that result piece. And that's what really ties up that accomplishment statement to let me know, why was it important that you were doing that thing? Or how did you do that thing that was different than how other people did that thing? Right? Lots of people can be servers, but some people are just really good at building relationships with people when they're taking orders, and like they're super friendly and they just make you feel really good when they're serving you at a restaurant, right? You want to be able to tell someone that you're able to do that. So the example when I have here, developed is our strong action verb. So developed marketing materials, that's the job duty, right? And we could stop there, and most people do, but we don't want to do that. We're going to say that I was using Adobe InDesign, and this is important, especially for design-related internships or careers. Make sure you let them know what kind of things you've been using and how you use them. And then that result piece at the end. So why was it important? You were promoting the Office of Student Employment. Does that make sense to everybody? this is, I will admit, this takes the most amount of time when you're working on a resume, but it's the most worthwhile thing that you can do for your resume. So I also wanted to put some other examples in front of you. So this is like someone who maybe worked in landscaping. So their original bullet points are at the top, and then we can revise them at the bottom. So you can see that second bullet point just says in charge of a team of 5 workers, right? I'm like, okay. But if I say I trained and supervised a crew of 5 workers, leading by example and ensuring compliance with company policies, that gives me a whole lot more information than I was in charge of 5 workers. So that's, if you don't take anything else away, make some good bullet points and put those on your resume. A good rule of thumb when you're building bullet points, imagine yourself in an interview situation. You should be able to talk about each one of your bullet points for like 5 minutes. If you can't talk about it for that long, try again. Try a different skill, try a different job responsibility that you had, because whatever you were trying to make it out of is probably not as relevant as you think it is. Okay, before I move on to cover letters, does anyone have questions about resumes in general?
I had a question about the informational
Oh,
interview.
yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I had one last semester for a class and I forgot, but I had a question about like when they say like keep in touch and like let me know, like what is the best way to like keep in touch kind of?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, because I would say they genuinely want you to keep in touch. They wouldn't just say that just to say that. So even if you did like a once a semester kind of thing, I would shoot them a quick email just to say, hey, I hope you're doing well. I just wanted to update you and let you know, like, I'm halfway through the spring semester and I've been learning about blah, blah, blah. And I saw these kind of internship openings. I thought they looked interesting. I'm thinking about maybe applying for some, like just little quick updates like that. Does not have to be a, like, you don't have to write them a novel, just something really quick to let them know what you're up to. Or maybe you got an internship and you can say, hey, I've been working in this internship. It's been really fun. I met all these connections. Thank you so much for your time. This really helped. Just maybe once a semester kind of thing is perfectly fine. But I wouldn't say you have to stick to that either. Obviously, I hadn't talked to Wayne for like a whole year and he still remembered who I was. So yeah, I think as long as you can remind them who you are and what kind of conversation you had, that's going to be more important than the number of times that you connect with them.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And you could also invite them for another informational interview or just like a catch up time. If you're like, hey, you want to grab coffee? I'd love to tell you about what I'm doing now, or I'd love to hear about what you're working on. I think that's perfectly acceptable too.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions right now? Okay, then let's talk about cover letters. So I realize that people hear mixed things about cover letters. Lots of people will say it doesn't matter, like nobody reads cover letters, it's a waste of time. I'm not on that side. I'm on the side of write the cover letter because you don't know who is looking at your application, and sometimes that can make a difference for most people reviewing applications. So your cover letter is the opportunity to add a little personality to your application and also kind of share how your internship fits in with your overall goals. And sometimes that is a big deal for lots of people hiring in an internship setting. So I wanted to share how I typically write a cover letter, and I break it down into paragraphs and the kind of information that I would share in each paragraph, especially for an internship opportunity. So I break it down. Introduction, so very basic, couple sentences, letting them know what kind of job you're applying for, why you're excited about that opportunity, and that's your opportunity to show that you've done some research on the company. So if you have spoken to someone who works there, you can name drop them in the introduction paragraph. If you know their mission statement and you really align with that, like that's a great time to talk about that. Give it like 3 or 4 sentences. Just let them know who you are, what you're applying for, why you're excited about it, and then move on into your education paragraph. So I always dedicate one for education, one for experience. And in my education paragraph, I might talk about why I decided to study whatever I'm studying. So if there was something in my life that happened, I might talk about that. Or if I participated in some kind of activity when I was in high school and that's what led me this direction, things like that are just helpful conceptually for people to understand your story a little bit better. And then this is also your opportunity to talk about why you like what you study, what you're learning about, and how that applies to this internship. So anytime you're writing a cover letter, you want to make sure, one, it's tailored to that specific opportunity that you're applying for. You never want to submit the same cover letter for multiple opportunities. And two, that it's relevant to your opportunity that you're applying for. So you want to make sure if you're talking about something, you can somehow relate it back to the internship that you're applying for. So you might talk about, I'm taking themed entertainment design classes and I learned how to use SketchUp in this class, and I'm really excited about being able to design a queue using SketchUp and other formats also. Like whatever it is that you want to mention in that education paragraph, just relate it back. And then you can start talking a little bit about your goals too. So I would start mentioning, like, I started studying this and my goal is to work in this area someday. And I think that this internship is a great fit for that because blah, 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 whatever the reason is that it's a good fit. And that'll kind of like bleed you into the experience paragraph a little bit. And this is, you do not want to regurgitate your resume. So hear me when I say that. You're not regurgitating what's on your resume, you're enhancing the resume. So this is your opportunity to give examples of things that you have done in your experience that relate to this internship. So if you are going to say that you're a very organized person, you better be telling them how you know that you're an organized person, right? What have you done? What's an example for that? So you want to talk about a couple of things in there. Again, relevancy is important. Go back to the job description and see what kind of skills that they're looking for and reference those skills in particular. You want to use that same language in both the resume and the cover letter. And then talk about how your experiences relate to your goals and how your goals relate to the internship. Now the internship will feed into your overarching career someday. And that will help you bleed into the conclusion paragraph. Couple of things about the conclusion. Make sure you summarize everything that you've said so far. So tell them, one, why you're excited about this opportunity, and two, why you're the best candidate for this opportunity. So tell them, rewind education experience and why that makes you a good fit. And then you kind of want to give them a call to action. Something like, I would love to talk about my qualifications with you further. I can be reached at, here's my email and phone number. And that kind of leaves the ball in their court to ask you for an interview. Okay, questions about cover letters?
This is more of a comment, but I just wrote a cover letter for the internship I applied to, and I had no idea where to start. I was like, I know what a cover letter is, but I don't really know what it's supposed to include. And I ended up finding Harvard has, like, on its writing website a bunch of example cover letters. So if you're like me and you need like specific read-throughs to figure out what to write, I found those to be very helpful.
Yes, Purdue OWL also has some really good examples too. And for both resume and cover letter, have someone review it. Have someone in your life review it. Go to your career center, go to the writing center, ask your friends, ask your family. Just have people look at it, because sometimes, like, there's just small grammatical errors or there's just things that don't make sense, but you think it's supposed to make sense because you wrote it. Like, it doesn't hurt to have multiple people look at it and just make sure that everything looks clean and nice and organized.
Hey,
Okay.
Carrie.
Yeah.
This is a question and a comment.
Okay.
Do you remember, I was thinking when we were at IAPA, I believe that MK Haley, who's a former Disney Imagineer, teaches at University of Texas in Austin now. Did she say that the cover letter is the most important part?
I don't remember, but she might have.
I feel like she said that, and basically it was because you know, that's your chance to kind of show some individuality and show some of your personality. So
yes. Yeah, and I always, like I said, err on the side of caution, because some people don't read cover letters, but I would rather have a cover letter that's submitted and one person in the group read it and 3 people don't, but that one person is going to remember something about me because of that, than me not have anything at all. So that sometimes is the reason that people stand out. I've served on lots of hiring committees in my job, in my full-time job. And lots of times I've gotten a resume that I'm like, why would this person apply for this job? It doesn't make any sense. And then I read their cover letter and I'm like, oh, okay. And so then they move on to the next round because it makes sense to me. Otherwise, I would have just been like, no, doesn't make sense. So you never know. Okay. So I want to move on to Disney College Program because I know we're running shorter on time now. And I want to talk a little bit about the application process and what that looks like. And I know Cassandra's here too, so she can pipe in a little bit also. But I did a little digging and a little research so that you guys could get some good information. But first, I want to plug the information sessions that the college program is doing right now. They do them every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I put the times and the links, and I can share this PowerPoint on the Canvas page. But they're happening until next week. So even if you're thinking about applying in the future, I would definitely recommend attending those and just getting some information there. That's going to be your best bet for just learning about what the program is, what it looks like, applications, ask your questions, all of that kind of stuff. So that's my number one tip. Go to those information sessions. Cassandra, have you been to those? Did you attend any of those last semester?
I did not know, actually. This is the first time hearing of them, though I'm sure there's tons of great information that would have definitely helped prepare me a bit more.
Yes. I hosted one of the managers of the college program who puts these on. And he said they have intentionally started doing them every single semester. They were just doing it for COVID. And now they're like, we should do this all the time because students have lots of questions. So this is new. This did not exist when I did the college program, but it would have been super helpful just to have a time for Q&A and learning about it and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so the web-based interview. This is where I did some research. So if you're not familiar with what the application process for the Disney College program looks like, it's an online application. So you fill it out, and then once you're done with that, you may or may not be invited to do a web-based interview. And so basically what that is, it's like a personality test. And they're just testing to see if you're a good fit for the company. So before I jump into it, Sandra, do you want to share what that was like when you were taking that web-based interview?
Yeah, so essentially, after, filling out the entire form, my previous work experience, everything regarding academics and all of that, I got an email, I think a couple days later, saying that I had 3 days to fill out the web-based survey or interview. And so there are a variety of questions like, I always smile at work. And then you kind of choose, like, are you a 1? Do you never do that? Or are you a 5? Do you always do that? And so you kind of rate how you are on that scale, but then they'll sometimes twist the questions and make it the same question, but just worded differently, just to see if your answers are consistent. There's also a lot of situational questions. So, if you're dealing with an irate guest, you're more likely to, and then A, yell at them, B, serve them with a smile, C, and so on. So they're kind of trying to get a feel for who you are as a person, as well as how you would deal situationally. But with that, they're also kind of trying to trick you to make sure that you're consistent with your answers rather than trying to tell them what they want to hear.
Yes. And that's how I remember it too. Because I remember taking it, I was like, I'd go through it and I'd be like, I feel like I already asked this question. And I'd be like, I think I answered it this way. So yeah, going back to some research that I was doing on this. Number one, it's a pretty lengthy little questionnaire. It's not going to take you 5 minutes. It'll take you a little bit longer than that. And you should be giving yourself enough time that you're paying attention to each question. So you're noticing when they kind of throw you off like that. So give yourself the time and also make sure you're in a reliable space. So make sure you have internet, make sure it's quiet, make sure there's no distractions, things like that. That will help you perform a little bit better on that interview. It probably also helps, I don't quite remember if I took it right away when I got the email or if I waited a little bit. It probably helps to give it a little time, plan your day out around that so then you don't have any disruptions in that process either. So make sure you're kind of thinking strategically. Don't just get so excited and trigger happy and click the button. It happens, I know. And then answer honestly and truthfully. I think a lot of people get tripped up because they're trying to figure out like, what's the Disney answer to this question, right? And there is no Disney answer to this question. They want to know who you are and if you're a good fit. So you want to answer it honestly and truthfully, and that will help you make sure that you are consistent throughout. So that's the other thing, just like Cassandra said, be consistent. They're going to ask a lot of questions that are the same question, just asked differently. So stay consistent and keep your answers the same.
I actually had a friend that got to the web-based interview and got to the point where they were consistently asking the same question. And she was thinking more so, well, I always smile. And she was like, well, that's not necessarily true. And then the next question had to do with work. And she's like, oh, well, it's Disney. They want me to smile on the clock. And because she was so inconsistent and trying to do it her way, but then also the Disney way, she ended up not passing the web-based interview and going on to the next level. So it's definitely something you want to take the time out and really think about. And rather than thinking about, as Carrie said, rather than sitting there and going, oh, what does Disney want to hear? You have to remain like truthful to yourself, because that's the whole point of the web-based interview, kind of just getting a feel for who you are as a person, whether or not you'll mesh with the company.
Yes, thank you. I feel like people just get so excited and so wrapped up in it. They're just like, let's do it. And that's how you get inconsistent, and that's how you get into the space where you're like, what would Disney say about this? It's not about that. What would you say about that? That's what it's about. So I know people like, that's like one of the main things people are like, how do I get past the web-based interview? So I made sure to look at it because it's been a while since I took it, but I do remember it being that way for sure. Okay, so I know after that becomes an interview process, but I knew that we wouldn't have time to touch on interviews. But I'm happy to answer questions about them if you guys have them. And I also want to open it up for Cassandra to talk about the actual interview that came after the web-based interview.
Yeah, so after the web-based interview, typically there's a phone call. So they'll go and let you know within usually around 15 days, if not less, whether or not you made it onto the next round, which is the phone-based interview. And because of COVID, they actually stopped doing the phone-based interview. So I didn't necessarily have to deal with that. They just told me right away whether or not I got it. Still like the same time frame, unfortunately, so I had to wait a bit. But as of the moment, they're not currently doing the phone interviews. When they start doing those again, there are tons of YouTube videos and resources that kind of give you a flavor as to what the questions they ask, what they want to know. And again, it's more so getting a feel for who you are, what you're interested in. During the phone interview, they'll ask you like preferences of, well, where do you want to work? Do you want to work in service? Do you want to work in food? Do you want to work in lodging, attractions? And so it's kind of just to get more of a feel as to where to place you and whether or not you mesh like as a person. And if so, then you kind of get that letter saying, hey, congratulations, you got it. And honestly, when I got that back in October, I fell to my knees crying because it's been, something that I wanted to do since middle school. So it's a great feeling. And then from there, how the timeline goes is you don't get much communication wise besides, oh, did you do this? Did you do that? More information for them, just for their records. When you do get accepted, you need to go and place down a deposit of $400 just to go and reserve your spot in the program. And so you have, I believe, 3 days to go and put the deposit down and say, yes, I want to do this. If you pass 3 days, you're not going to get it. Like your spot is back, just because there's so many people that want to participate in it. And then with that, as you get closer to your date, usually a couple months out, a month, so on, you'll get, if you're accepted to the Orlando program, you'll get an email about, setting up your dorm, whether or not you want to opt out of housing, stuff regarding parking passes. And then once you get usually a month out, several weeks out, like around 3 weeks, they'll give you, this is where you're staying, this is where you're working, this is what your job will be. And so then from there, you can kind of connect to people on Facebook groups and figure stuff out. And then when it comes to your arrival date, you physically show up there at whatever time they give you. And that's when they give you all the information and stuff that you need, as well as where you do your traditions training and kind of your welcome ceremony, and you're able to move into your dorm. If you're going to the Anaheim location in California, they don't provide housing for that. So you'd have to provide your own housing. Usually they go and they give DCP people that have done it already once preference for the California location. However, sometimes people who are doing it their first try will get in for California. So that's kind of just the lowdown as to how the timeline goes from there.
I do also just want to say, like with any interview, Disney or anywhere else, they're not expecting you to be perfect, especially for an internship opportunity. Like they realize that you're a student and like the college program knows that you're a student. Like they want to know like that you are willing to grow and learn through your internship process. They care more about that than you already knowing all of the skills. So that's just their chance to see if you're a good fit and if the internship is a good fit. And it's also your chance to see if whatever you're applying for is a good fit for you also. So any questions about Disney College program, interviews, resumes, finding an internship, anything like that?
Do you recommend like reaching back out after submitting and not hearing anything from an application? I've heard mixed things about that. And I also never know, like, if I do reach back out, what's a good timeline to stick to?
That's a good question. First, I would pay attention to the closing date of the application. So if it says applications close on March 1st, but you reach out like today, they would be like, well, like we haven't started reviewing because they're not closed until March 1st. So obviously like don't reach out before the deadline. I usually say about like 2 weeks or so is a safe time to reach out. And sometimes like you'll run into internships that have like ongoing deadlines. So I would say reach out 2 weeks after you submit your application, because that probably means that they're reviewing on an ongoing basis. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and I would say like shooting an email is perfectly fine if you have the email of like the hiring manager or whoever. But if you don't, you can always call the company too if it's a small enough company, and just ask about the application. That kind of brings your application to the top of the pile for them to check on it, which is kind of nice. Other questions, comments, or stories?
I've got a quick one.
Sure.
So there's a company down in Orlando called B Morrow Productions. And I was recently watching a YouTube video where he was being interviewed about his business and the industry and everything. And I was kind of surprised. One thing that he said is that people who have done the college program or in general worked in the parks, he said that when they're receiving applications, if someone has that experience, they get moved to the top of the list. So that I think would be something to think about.
Yes. And I think that's true for some other companies, but Disney also. It doesn't, like, it's not always to the top of the list, but if you have prior Disney experience, that is always helpful. And I have heard, like, when you're applying for Disney professional internships, if you are a former college program participant, that is usually like the tiebreaker situation. So say I applied for an internship and it's with, I don't know, Imagineering and interior design. I'm Kara, I'm taking your internship. And this other person also applied and they have great experience or about equal, except I did the college program. I'm more likely to get the internship than the other person with equal experience. So that's something that's helpful to know too. And I would say most people that I've had conversations with who work full-time for Disney are previous interns or college program or both. So it helps to be on.
Cool. That was great, Gary. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Thanks, Cassandra. Okay, well, if that's it, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. I will try to get the recording posted to our YouTube channel tomorrow. And that way you guys can have access to it to go back and check out any of those slides or anything you want to revisit. So thanks everybody who showed up. I really appreciate it. And I hope you got something out of it.
I'll also
do-
share. Oh, go ahead, Harold.
I do have a question. So the video will, so you will share the link once the video is uploaded? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll put the like slides that I used in the Canvas, like in the files or something, just so you can access it. And Ellen, I think you could put the video there also. So it's on Canvas and YouTube.
Got it. That's a good idea.
And we can also plug that we're going to do another one of these next week with Kara, and she's going to teach us how to do SketchUp.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that next week or is it next month?
Oh wait, is it next week or next month? Sorry.
Next
It's
month.
probably next
Yeah,
month.
I think
Okay.
it's March 21st, or is it I can't remember.
I think it's the 21st.
That's what
But
I was
yes,
thinking.
come back.
So yeah.
I got too excited about it. Sorry.
You scared me.
That's all right.
I
We're
was
gonna
like,
start doing
I'm
it
not
every
gonna say
Monday.
it.
Sorry.
Yeah, so
Feeling ambitious over here.
Kara will do the next one, and it will be about using SketchUp, which is probably one of the most popular applications used in the industry. And then a couple weeks after that, we'll have another one in April, and that will be about sketching and illustrating for ideation and that sort of thing. So we hope to have a final person lined up to do that here pretty soon, and we'll make that announcement once we know. So that's all.